Welcome back. We'll take you now to those historic events unfolding in the Middle East this morning, where all living Israeli hostages have been returned to their loved ones in a major exchange between Israel and Hamas.
Donald Trump was celebrated in Israel's parliament as the president declared a new beginning for that region. Alex Ryvchin, who is the Executive Council of the Australian Jury Association, joins us now in Coogee to reflect on this all. Alex, we really appreciate your time this morning. It's been an emotional 24 hours, incredible sense of jubilation in Israel. Can we just ask you how you were feeling when you were watching this all unfold?
Look, it was one of the most beautiful moments of my life. You know, this is one for the ages. And when you consider all the despair and the misery, everything that's happened in the last 2 years, beginning on October 7, to then watch the footage of these reunions, you know, families that thought they would never be reunited, families who thought their loved ones would wallow or die in those dungeons, and to see them together, it's like life redeemed from the jaws of death. It's such a beautiful thing. And of course it's tinged with sadness, because you look at the fact that 28 hostages will return in body bags. You look at the fact that on October 7, 1,200 people were massacred, and the hostages being released today, they're the lucky ones. But at the same time, you have to find joy, you have to celebrate. And this is really a historic moment that I think will live with the Jewish people forever. I don't think we'll ever forget this day.
Well, you're right. You know, there is such a complex mix of emotions, I think, probably among the Jewish community right now. There is still a great deal of anguish over the deceased hostages, many of whom are yet to be returned. How do you all navigate those complex emotions and feelings and juxtapositions, I suppose, at a time like this?
You know, we've gotten used to it these 2 years. We felt the full spectrum of human emotion, from betrayal and anguish and fear to jubilation and hope. But ultimately, we look to our traditions, we look to our faith. This evening begins the most joyous of Jewish festivals, which is called Simchat Torah. And it actually obligates us to celebrate no matter what's happening in our lives. So we kind of look to the life cycle of the Jewish people and the traditions that have been honed through thousands of years of ups and downs and turmoil and rejoicing. And that shows us kind of how to navigate this and how to handle this. But, you know, we're obligated as well, despite all the bad things that are around us and in our lives and that's transpired in the last 2 years, you have to find the joy, you have to celebrate. And when you see families reunited that way, it's a victory for life, it's a victory for love, it shows the best of humanity, and it's something to be embraced and held on to, no matter what tomorrow brings.
Alex, it's going to be a long road ahead for that region, as we all know, and we're all welcoming the change and just, you know, praying and giving our thoughts out to those families out there who've lost people. But these diplomatic negotiations that brought us here are so complex, and they're going to take a lot of care and a lot of work. What do you make of how it's all come about, and moving forward, how it's going to work?
Well, firstly, I think it's clear how this has come about, and that's through a combination of Israeli military sacrifice and achievement on the battlefield, which left Hamas completely isolated and hopeless, really, and then US military and economic power, which was harnessed towards good, towards seeing the hostages released. And that combination has created a situation where Hamas is now entirely friendless. Even in the Arab and Islamic world, it had no way out, both diplomatically and on the battlefield, and it accepted effectively a capitulation. Something which a few weeks ago people were saying was impossible. People believed that Hamas would never release the hostages up front. They would never lay down their arms or surrender. But this is where we've gotten to from 2 years of sacrifice and labour and work, and we're here. In terms of the road ahead, you're right. There'll be a lot of bumps and there'll be a lot of twists and turns, and it's highly unpredictable given the volatility of the region and the history. But when you have a situation like this where the Arab and Islamic world and the free world is unified in saying enough of this cycle of terror and war and despair and bloodshed, we want to move beyond it. There's talk now of the Indonesian president coming to Israel, which would be absolutely historic. This is the leader of the world's most populous Muslim nation. So there's talk about greater engagement and integration of Israel into the region, and that has to happen as well. I think everyone has seen in the last few years what comes from war and terror, and no one wants to return to that. And I think the Palestinians will also take stock of the choices they've made, and now they'll be presented with a new path of peaceful reconstruction, of coexistence, and I hope they take that road, I really do.
You know, Donald Trump says the war is over. Benjamin Netanyahu says he's committed to maintaining peace. Indeed, the world is hoping that, of course, that is what we see in the coming days and months and years ahead. Do you feel confident that it will stand?
I do, but I fear that might be my natural optimism as a human being and as a Jewish person. That's kind of how we live and how we look at things. But it's so easy to, again, retreat into despair and to look at the fact that year on year there's been terrorism, there's been war, and there's been false dawns of hope which end in tears and bloodshed. But again, I think something historic has happened. I think what has happened in the last few days is the biggest moment in the history of the Middle East since 1979, when Israel signed a peace treaty with Egypt, which is held to this day. And that did have a transformative effect on the region, and I believe this will as well. I think people have seen what the other path looks like of war and terrorism, and now there's nothing left but to recognise the legitimacy of the other, to work towards coexistence and peace, to put petty grievances and hatreds behind us, and work towards something better, because everyone deserves to live in peace and prosperity, and now there's a real prospect and hope of that.
Alex Ryvchin, we appreciate your time this morning and your words as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.